The twin moons of Ilaria Prime hung low over the horizon, like two glowing eyes watching the endless city below. Their silver light reflected from crystal towers, floating transit rails, and streams of flying vehicles moving through the night sky. From a distance, the capital looked less like a city and more like a galaxy folded into the shape of one. Ethan had absolutely no interest in any of it. He was currently lying halfway inside a broken cargo shuttle with a plasma wrench in one hand and a maintenance scanner in the other. The shuttle responded to his efforts by releasing a cloud of blue smoke directly into his face. Ethan coughed. "Wonderful," he muttered. "That's exactly what I needed today. Toxic smoke. My day was becoming far too pleasant." Beside him stood Varo, a four-armed alien trader who seemed physically incapable of taking anything seriously. Varo glanced at the smoke. "Good news." "What? You are not on fire." Ethan stared at him. "That's your good news? Would you prefer bad news?" "I feel like I'm about to hear it regardless." Varo pointed toward the engine. "The engine is on fire." Ethan closed his eyes. For 3 full seconds, he considered abandoning civilization and living inside a cave. Unfortunately, caves cost money too. He crawled out from beneath the shuttle and sat heavily on a nearby supply crate. The repair yard stretched around them beneath towering energy lamps. Cargo drones floated overhead carrying containers between landing pads, while merchants argued over shipping contracts. Everything moved, everything worked, except the shuttle Ethan was being paid to repair, and Ethan himself. His finances were nearly as damaged as the engine. He checked the balance on his wrist terminal. The number displayed was so small that it almost looked like a typo. He groaned. Varo leaned over. "Oh, that's bad. I know. You could buy half a sandwich. I can't even buy the good half." Varo laughed loudly. The human shook his head. Life on Ilaria Prime had seemed exciting when he first arrived 2 years earlier. Explore alien worlds, meet strange civilizations, experience advanced technology. Instead, he spent most days repairing machines that other people had broken. Occasionally, those people shouted at him for fixing them too slowly. A maintenance drone rolled past. Its digital display flashed. "Have a productive day," Ethan pointed at it. "Even the robots are mocking me now." Varo nearly fell over laughing. The trader sat beside him. "So, what is your solution?" "My solution? To your problems." Ethan looked toward the distant royal district visible beyond the city. The enormous palace stood atop a floating platform surrounded by rings of glowing crystal. The home of Queen Lyra, the most powerful ruler on the planet. Ethan sighed dramatically. "I need to marry the queen of this world." Varo burst into laughter. "Oh yes, excellent plan. I'm serious." "No, you're not. Think about it. No more debt, no more broken engines, unlimited food." Varo nodded thoughtfully. "You have convinced me. Marry the queen." Ethan spread his hands. "Exactly." Varo pointed toward the palace. "Perhaps she is waiting for you." "Absolutely. Every night she probably stares out her window, wondering when the handsome mechanic from landing sector 12 will arrive." Varo laughed even harder. Ethan continued. "Maybe she'll see me and immediately say, 'There he is, the man who smells faintly of engine coolant.'" A calm female voice suddenly spoke behind him. "That would be a very unusual reason to choose a husband." Both men froze, slowly, very slowly. Ethan turned around. Several royal guards stood behind him wearing silver armor illuminated by flowing blue energy lines. At their center stood a woman. She looked human at first glance, but her elegant long ears revealed her alien heritage. Silver blonde hair flowed over her shoulders. A crystalline crown rested upon her head. Her violet eyes were fixed directly on Ethan. Queen Lyra herself, the ruler of Ilaria Prime, the most powerful woman on the planet, and she had apparently heard everything. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the maintenance drone nearby seemed to stop. Ethan's brain immediately began searching for escape routes. Unfortunately, every available route appeared to end with royal guards. Varo quietly slid several steps away. Coward. The queen studied Ethan with surprising calm. Then, to everyone's shock, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. She was smiling, and somehow, that felt even more dangerous. The silence that followed felt longer than it actually was. Ethan stood frozen beside the damaged shuttle while Queen Lyra calmly observed him. The energy lamps of the repair yard reflected from the silver details of her royal attire. Up close, she looked even more impressive. Her long ears rose gracefully through her silver blonde hair, and her violet eyes seemed far too intelligent for Ethan's comfort. Unfortunately, those same eyes were currently focused entirely on him. His survival instincts finally returned. "I can explain." The Queen folded her arms. "I'm listening." Ethan immediately realized he had no explanation. His brain searched desperately for one. Nothing arrived. "I was temporarily insane." Varo nearly choked. Several royal guards exchanged confused glances. The Queen blinked once. "Temporarily? Yes. And now?" "I would describe my condition as moderately insane." A few nearby workers tried unsuccessfully to hide their laughter. To Ethan's surprise, Queen Lyra seemed amused. The faint smile remained. "Interesting." Ethan pointed toward Varo. "It was his fault." Varo looked offended. "I did nothing. You encouraged me. I encouraged your joke. You should have stopped me. You are a grown human. That has never stopped me from making bad decisions." The Queen actually laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough. The entire repair yard seemed to freeze. Workers stared. Drones paused. Even the guards looked shocked. Apparently their queen rarely laughed. Lyra noticed the reactions immediately. The amusement disappeared from her face. Everyone quickly pretended to return to work. One maintenance drone drove directly into a cargo crate because it was too busy observing the Queen. The crash echoed across the landing pad. Ethan pointed. "At least someone is having a worse day than me." The drone's display flashed. "Error." The human nodded sympathetically. "I understand." Queen Lyra studied him for several seconds. Most people became nervous around royalty. Many became terrified. Ethan appeared incapable of behaving normally in any situation. That alone made him unusual. Her gaze shifted toward the damaged shuttle. "You are a mechanic? Officially? And unofficially? A professional survivor." Another smile threatened to appear. She hid it quickly. Before she could respond, one of the royal guards approached. "Your Majesty, we should return to the palace." Lyra nodded, but continued watching Ethan. Something about him felt strangely familiar. Not his face, not his voice. Something deeper, a feeling she could not explain. For a brief moment, an old memory surfaced. A forgotten chamber beneath the palace. Ancient crystal walls, a machine older than recorded history, and words engraved into black metal. Arrived. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared. Lyra frowned slightly. Meanwhile, Ethan was trying to calculate whether jumping into the nearest cargo container would improve his situation. Probably not. The Queen suddenly spoke again. "What is your name?" "Ethan." "Only Ethan?" "My parents were not very creative." Varo covered his face. The nearest guard looked physically uncomfortable. Lyra tilted her head. "You speak to your queen this way? Apparently? And you are not afraid?" Ethan glanced around. "At the moment, I'm too confused to be afraid." That answer seemed surprisingly honest. The Queen looked toward the city skyline. Thousands of lights glittered beneath the night sky. Flying vehicles moved between crystal towers. Beyond them, the floating royal district hovered silently above the capital. Then a royal transport descended from above. Its smooth silver hull reflected the moons as it landed nearby. The guards immediately moved into formation. Lyra began walking toward the vessel. Ethan released a breath he had been holding. Good. The Queen was leaving. His humiliation would finally end. Then Lyra stopped. Without turning around, she spoke. "Come to the palace tomorrow." Every muscle in Ethan's body froze. "What?" She glanced back. "Tomorrow." "Why?" "Because I asked." The answer somehow felt completely unreasonable and perfectly logical at the same time. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing useful emerged. The Queen stepped into the transport, the entrance sealed. Moments later, the vessel rose into the air and disappeared into the night. The repair yard remained silent. Several workers stared at Ethan. Others whispered. Varo slowly turned toward him. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, the traitor grinned. "Oh, this is terrible," Ethan groaned. "This is a disaster." Varo nodded enthusiastically. The best disaster I've ever seen. Across the city, hidden deep beneath the royal palace, something ancient suddenly awakened. Crystal circuits illuminated one after another. Machines untouched for thousands of years came alive. A forgotten chamber filled with blue light. An enormous black crystal stood at its center. Ancient symbols appeared across its surface. For the first time in centuries, the machine registered a signal, one matching a pattern predicted long ago. A single message appeared in glowing silver letters. Outsider detected, prophecy sequence initiated, and above, completely unaware that destiny itself had just noticed him, Ethan sat on a supply crate and wondered whether fleeing to another planet was still an option. Ethan spent most of the night convincing himself that the Queen's invitation had been a misunderstanding. Perhaps she had meant another Ethan. The galaxy was large. Surely there were millions of Ethans, maybe thousands, at least dozens. Unfortunately, when he woke the next morning, a royal transport was parked directly outside his apartment. That seemed difficult to misunderstand. Ethan stared through the window. The sleek silver vehicle hovered silently above the street, while 4 royal guards waited beside it. He closed the curtain, opened it again. The transport was still there. Disappointing, he muttered. His apartment's artificial assistant activated. Good morning, Ethan. It is not. You have received 7 messages. I don't want them. You have received 23 new messages. I especially don't want the boy. The assistant paused. You have also received 81 social network notifications. Ethan nearly fainted. Oh no. News traveled quickly on Ilaria Prime. News involving the Queen traveled even faster. News involving the Queen and a human mechanic traveled at the speed of light. His wrist terminal suddenly vibrated again. Varo's face appeared on the holographic screen. The traitor was laughing before Ethan even answered. You are famous. I don't want to be. Too late. Can I undo it? No. Can I leave the planet? No. Can I fake my death? Varo considered it. Possibly. Ethan brightened. Really? No, but it would be entertaining. The human ended the call immediately. 10 minutes later, Ethan found himself sitting inside the royal transport. The vehicle accelerated upward through layers of traffic. Below, the capital stretched endlessly across the horizon. Crystal towers reflected sunlight, while magnetic transit lines glowed between districts. Massive cargo ships drifted through the atmosphere. Everything looked beautiful. Normally, Ethan would have enjoyed the view. Today he was busy wondering whether royal prisons had comfortable beds. The floating royal district approached. It looked even larger up close. Several enormous platforms hovered thousands of meters above the city. Gardens, towers, laboratories, military headquarters, and the palace itself occupied the interconnected structures. Advanced shield generators shimmered around the entire complex. The transport passed through security fields. Artificial intelligence systems scanned every passenger. Energy sensors illuminated briefly, then something unexpected happened. A warning symbol appeared. One guard frowned, another checked his display. What happened? The first guard stared at the readings. I don't know. The symbol vanished before either could investigate further. Ethan noticed nothing. Far below the palace, however, the ancient machine, hidden beneath the foundations, registered the event. Its crystal core pulsed brighter. Outsider confirmed. Compatibility increasing. The message disappeared. Meanwhile, Ethan arrived at the palace. The main entrance alone was larger than several buildings he had lived in. Massive crystal arches towered overhead. Royal banners drifted through the air, despite the absence of wind. Servant drones moved silently between corridors. Everything looked expensive. Very expensive. Ethan immediately felt poor. A guide escorted him deeper into the palace. Nobles filled the halls. Many possessed the same elegant long ears as the Queen. Some wore formal clothing decorated with glowing technology. Others carried personal AI assistants floating beside them. Nearly everyone stopped to stare at Ethan. He smiled awkwardly. Nobody smiled back. This is going well. The guide ignored him. Several minutes later, they entered a circular chamber surrounded by floating holographic displays. Queen Lyra stood near a transparent wall overlooking the city. Sunlight illuminated her silver hair. She looked calm, confident, completely in control, the opposite of Ethan. The guide bowed and departed. For a moment only the Queen, and the human remained. Lyra turned toward him. You came. I considered several alternatives, such as running away. The Queen nodded. Reasonable. Ethan blinked. That was not the response he expected. She almost smiled. Again, it was becoming a dangerous habit. Do you know why you're here? She asked. To be executed politely? No. Good. That was my leading theory. Lyra walked toward a nearby console. With a gesture, a holographic image appeared above the floor. Ancient symbols rotated slowly through the air, thousands of years old, complex, unfamiliar. Ethan stared at them, and suddenly something strange happened. One of the symbols changed, then another. The entire projection shifted. The chamber's computers emitted warning sounds. Lyra froze. Scientists nearby looked shocked. The symbols were reacting to Ethan's presence. Ancient code that had remained unchanged for centuries was rewriting itself. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Finally, Ethan pointed at the glowing projection. So, yes? Lyra asked. Is it bad when mysterious ancient technology starts recognizing you? The Queen stared at the impossible display. For the first time, genuine concern appeared in her violet eyes. I'm beginning to think, she said quietly, that we are about to find out. And deep beneath the palace, the ancient machine activated another sequence that had remained dormant for over 3,000 years. The holographic symbols continued shifting above the chamber floor. Ancient characters rotated through the air like living stars. Lines of forgotten code appeared and vanished. Entire sections of the projection rewrote themselves, while alarms flashed across nearby scientific consoles. Nobody in the room understood what they were seeing. That fact alone terrified the scientists. One elderly researcher with silver robes stared at the display in disbelief. Impossible. Another scientist nodded nervously. The archive has never changed. Not once in 3 centuries. A third scientist pointed toward Ethan. It started when he arrived. Immediately, every eye turned toward him. Ethan sighed. I miss yesterday. Nobody laughed. The situation felt too strange. Queen Lyra stepped closer to the projection. Her long ears twitched slightly, a subtle sign of concentration among her people. What exactly is this archive? Ethan asked. One of the researchers answered, it contains fragments of information from the first civilization. The first civilization? The founders of Illyria Prime. Ethan frowned. You mean the people who built half the mysterious technology nobody understands anymore? Exactly. That seems irresponsible. The researcher looked confused. What does? Building machines. Nobody can explain. The scientist opened his mouth, then closed it again. Unfortunately, Ethan had a point. The hologram suddenly expanded. New symbols emerged from its center. A wave of blue light swept across the room. The computers immediately scanned everyone present. Results appeared. Researchers, royal guards, Queen Lyra, then Ethan. The moment his name appeared, the ancient symbols aligned. A perfect circle formed. The chamber became silent. One line of translated text emerged. Outsider verified. Several scientists nearly stopped breathing. The Queen's violet eyes narrowed. Translate the rest. The room's AI worked rapidly. Additional text appeared. Await further activation. Then everything shut down. The projection vanished. The alarm ceased. The chamber returned to normal. Nobody moved. Finally, Ethan raised one hand. I have a question. No one answered. Is being verified by ancient alien technology considered good news? The oldest scientist looked exhausted. We don't know. I was afraid you'd say that. Queen Lyra continued studying the empty space where the symbols had been. Something was happening. Something connected to the ancient prophecy. And somehow, Ethan stood at the center of it. The thought should have worried her. Instead, it made her curious. A dangerous emotion for a queen. Several hours later, Ethan found himself wandering through the palace under escort. Officially, the queen wanted him nearby for observation. Unofficially, nobody knew what else to do with him. The palace was enormous. Floating gardens stretched between crystal towers. Artificial waterfalls flowed upward instead of downward thanks to gravity manipulation fields. Autonomous drones trimmed glowing plants. Everything looked impossibly advanced. Ethan stared at a tree producing floating blue fruit. Is that normal? The guide nodded. Of course. The fruit is levitating. Yes. Why? The guide looked confused. Why would it not levitate? Ethan suddenly felt like the alien. A nearby fruit detached itself and drifted directly into his face. The guide pretended not to notice. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, several nobles gathered in a private chamber. Unlike the scientists, they were not curious about Ethan. They were concerned. A tall noble named Varo stood before a holographic table. His expression was cold. The prophecy is activating. One of the others crossed his arms. It may be coincidence. The ancient archive has not changed for centuries. Silence followed. Nobody could argue with that. Another noble spoke. If the queen believes the prophecy, then her influence grows even stronger, Veyron interrupted. His eyes hardened. And if the outsider truly exists, he becomes a threat. Back in the palace gardens, Ethan was completely unaware that powerful enemies had begun discussing him. He was too busy losing an argument with a floating fruit. The fruit continued following him. He moved left. The fruit moved left. He stopped. The fruit stopped. This thing is judging me. The guide finally sighed. It wants to be eaten. Oh, Ethan grabbed it. The fruit immediately exploded into harmless blue sparkles. The guide stared. Ethan stared. A passing servant laughed. The guide covered his face. For the second time that day, Ethan managed to embarrass himself using advanced alien agriculture. Far above them, Queen Lyra stood alone on a palace balcony overlooking the city. The wind moved gently through her silver hair. The capital stretched endlessly beneath her. Normally, the sight brought comfort. Today, it brought questions. Her thoughts returned to Ethan, the outsider, the prophecy, the impossible reaction of the ancient archive. Then, her personal communicator activated. An encrypted message appeared. Urgent. Activity detected beneath the palace. Source: restricted ancient facility. Lyra's expression changed instantly because only a handful of people even knew that facility existed. And according to every historical record, it had been dormant for 3,000 years. Until now, the restricted facility beneath the palace was not listed on any public map. Most members of the royal government did not know it existed. Many historians believed it was a myth, and according to every official record, it had remained inactive since before the founding of the modern kingdom. Yet the warning on Queen Lyra's communicator was very real. Within minutes, she was descending through hidden transport shafts deep beneath the floating palace. Several trusted guards accompanied her. Ethan was not supposed to be there. Unfortunately, Ethan had accidentally overheard enough information to become curious. Curiosity had always been one of his worst qualities. Absolutely not, Lyra said when she found him following the group. Absolutely not what? You are not coming. That's disappointing. The queen crossed her arms. This facility contains unknown technology. That sounds exactly like something I should avoid. Correct. Which means I am definitely going. One guard quietly sighed. Another looked amused. Lyra stared at Ethan. For a moment, she considered ordering him back. Then she remembered the ancient archive. The machine had reacted specifically to him. Perhaps keeping him nearby was safer, or perhaps it was a terrible idea. At the moment, those possibilities felt equally likely. Several minutes later, the group arrived at a massive circular door, buried beneath kilometers of crystal foundations. The structure looked ancient, not old, ancient. Its black metallic surface reflected almost no light. Strange symbols covered its edges. The moment Ethan stepped closer, something happened. The symbols illuminated. Blue energy spread across the door like liquid light. Everyone froze. Ethan pointed at himself. I didn't touch anything. The door responded by opening. A deep, mechanical sound echoed through the underground chamber. Nobody looked comfortable. That feels significant, Ethan said. Nobody disagreed. Beyond the doorway stretched a vast corridor, illuminated by faint blue lights. The walls appeared seamless. No visible machinery, no visible power source. Yet everything remained operational after thousands of years. The group advanced carefully. Sensors scanned them from hidden locations. Ancient systems awakened one by one. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the facility became. Gravity shifted unexpectedly. Energy flowed through transparent channels beneath the floor. Entire sections of the corridor reconfigured themselves as they passed. Ethan looked around in amazement. I can barely keep a cargo shuttle running for 6 months. One guard glanced at the walls. This place survived 3,000 years. Now I feel personally attacked. Even Lyra struggled not to smile. Eventually they entered a colossal chamber. The room was so large that its ceiling disappeared into darkness. Thousands of crystal pillars extended upward. At the center stood an enormous sphere suspended in midair. Blue energy rotated around it. The object radiated power, ancient, mysterious, alive. Every scientific instrument immediately began recording the data. Then the sphere activated. A pulse of light swept across the chamber. One by one, every guard was scanned, then Lyra, then Ethan. The moment the scan reached him, the sphere brightened dramatically. The entire facility responded. Lights activated everywhere. Hidden systems awakened. Machines that had slept for millennia came alive. A voice echoed through the chamber. Identity confirmed. Everyone became still. The voice continued. Authorized access granted. Ethan looked around. Please tell me that's normal. It is not, Lyra answered. The sphere suddenly projected a massive hologram into the air. A star map appeared. Thousands of stars filled the chamber. Entire sectors of the galaxy became visible. Gasps spread among the scientists. The map was unlike anything in their archives. It showed regions beyond known space, civilizations long forgotten, ancient routes connecting distant worlds. Then a symbol appeared, directly above Illyria Prime, a glowing circle, pulsing, active. One scientist stared in shock. This isn't a navigation system. What is it? Lyra asked. The scientist swallowed. I think it's a monitoring network. The room became silent. A network capable of observing entire star systems, built thousands of years ago. The implications were staggering. Then another message appeared. Warning, successor protocol activating. Ethan frowned. Successor protocol? The sphere brightened again. Before anyone could respond, a hidden section of the chamber opened. A smaller structure emerged from beneath the floor. A black crystal pedestal. Ancient symbols covered its surface. The same symbols from the prophecy archive. The same symbols that reacted to Ethan. The machine projected a final line of text. Awaiting arrival of the outsider. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because according to the machine, the outsider had not merely been predicted. The entire facility had been waiting for him for 3,000 years. And somewhere far above, in a luxurious palace tower, noble Varo received news that the ancient facility had activated. His expression darkened. For the first time, he began preparing plans that involved far more than political opposition. Because if the prophecy was real, then the balance of power across the entire planet was about to change, and some people would do anything to stop that from happening. The chamber remained silent long after the final message disappeared, awaiting arrival of the outsider. The glowing words faded from the air, yet their impact remained. Scientists stared at the ancient machine. Guards stared at Ethan. Ethan stared at everyone else. Finally, he pointed toward himself. Just to clarify, we're talking about me? Nobody answered. That answer was answer enough. I preferred life when my biggest problem was a broken engine. One of the scientists rubbed his forehead. At this point, so do we. The enormous sphere continued rotating above the chamber floor. Streams of blue energy flowed through its surface like rivers of light. Queen Lyra remained calm on the outside. Inside, however, her thoughts raced. For years, she had heard stories about the prophecy. Most rulers treated it as legend. Ancient myths were common across the galaxy, but now those myths were activating machines older than recorded history, and every path seemed to lead back to one human mechanic, a mechanic who apparently attracted trouble the way stars attracted gravity. The sphere suddenly emitted another pulse. A holographic figure appeared above the central platform. The image flickered, distorted, incomplete, yet clearly humanoid. The room immediately became alert. Ancient systems translated the signal. The figure spoke. Its voice sounded mechanical and strangely distant. Genetic match detected. Another pause followed. Then, successor evaluation in progress. Ethan blinked. I don't like those words. Neither do I, Lyra admitted. That surprised everyone. Queens were not supposed to admit uncertainty. Yet this situation had long since escaped normal royal procedures. The holographic figure disappeared. The sphere dimmed. For the moment, the facility became quiet again. The group eventually returned to the palace. Unfortunately, peace did not accompany them. News traveled through the royal district at astonishing speed. Nobody knew exactly what had happened underground. Everyone knew something had happened. By evening, rumors filled the capital. Some claimed Ethan was a lost prince. Others claimed he was an artificial human created by the first civilization. One particularly creative rumor suggested he was secretly three people pretending to be one person. Ethan stared at the latest newsfeed. How would that even work? Varo laughed so hard he nearly dropped his drink. The traitor had arrived at the palace after hearing the latest gossip. Congratulations. For what? You have become a public mystery. I didn't ask for that. Nobody ever asked for it. They sat in one of the palace gardens overlooking the city. Artificial stars illuminated the pathways. Floating flowers drifted gently through the air. Several palace drones monitored the grounds. Everything felt peaceful, too peaceful, because elsewhere inside the palace, noble Varo was making decisions, dangerous decisions. He stood before a secret gathering of influential nobles. Holographic maps floated above the table, military positions, political alliances, economic networks, every source of power on Illyria Prime. The prophecy grows stronger, Varo said. One noble shifted uneasily. What if the machine is correct? Varon's expression hardened. Then we face a threat unlike any before. The Queen supports him, which is exactly why action must be taken now. Silence followed. Nobody liked where the conversation was heading, yet nobody stopped it. Back in the garden, Ethan remained blissfully unaware. He was busy attempting to understand palace etiquette. So if I accidentally sit in the wrong chair, it's considered offensive? Yes. If I use the wrong spoon? Possibly. If I sneeze? Varo shrugged. Depends on the spoon, Ethan groaned. At that exact moment, Queen Lyra approached. Several attendants followed behind her. The attendants stopped at a respectful distance. Lyra joined them near the garden railing. The city lights reflected in her violet eyes. For a moment, nobody spoke. The atmosphere felt strangely comfortable. Unexpectedly so. The Queen looked toward Ethan. How are you adjusting to palace life? I've learned that chairs are apparently political. A faint smile appeared. Varo immediately looked away. He had noticed something everyone else was beginning to notice. The Queen smiled more around Ethan. Not often, not dramatically, but more. And that alone was enough to fuel another 1,000 rumors. Before the conversation could continue, a palace alarm suddenly activated. A deep tone echoed through the district. Every guard became alert instantly. The peaceful atmosphere vanished. Lyra's communicator illuminated. A message appeared. Unauthorized access detected. Location, ancient facility. The Queen's expression darkened. Nobody should have been able to enter the facility. Nobody. Then a second message arrived. This one was worse. Ancient systems overridden. Unknown user detected. Somewhere beneath the palace, hidden machinery was activating again. But this time, it wasn't responding to Ethan. Someone else had reached the ancient technology first. And whatever they were doing, it had triggered a planetary security warning that had not appeared in over 3,000 years. The palace alarms continued echoing through the night as Queen Lyra, Ethan, and a squad of elite guards rushed toward the ancient facility beneath the floating city. Nobody spoke during the descent. The warning messages growing across every security display were troubling enough. Unauthorized access confirmed. Successor protocol compromised. Planetary network activating. Even Ethan understood those messages sounded extremely unhealthy. I have a bad feeling. One guard glanced at him. You always have a bad feeling. That's because bad things keep happening. Unfortunately, he was correct. When they reached the ancient chamber, they found noble Varo waiting beside the enormous sphere. Blue energy flooded the room. Ancient systems glowed brighter than ever before. The star map filled the air. Entire sectors of the galaxy rotated around them. Varo looked calm, too calm. You should not have come, Lyra said. Varo smiled coldly. I could say the same. The ancient sphere pulsed. Behind him, hidden machinery continued activating. Thousands of years of dormant technology awakened throughout the planet. Orbital platforms emerged from deep space. Forgotten satellites powered on. Ancient defense systems responded to the facility's commands. The entire world was beginning to change. You triggered the network, Lyra realized. Of course, Varo replied. His eyes shifted toward Ethan. The prophecy threatens everything. Ethan blinked. I repaired engines 3 days ago. Exactly. I don't understand your point. Neither did several guards. For a brief moment, even the tension weakened. Varo sighed in frustration. The man was impossible to intimidate. The noble activated a console. Immediately, the sphere projected another holographic figure. The ancient intelligence appeared once more. This time, it was fully stable. Its metallic voice echoed across the chamber. Final successor evaluation commencing. The room fell silent. The AI scanned Veyron. Nothing happened. Then it scanned Lyra. The sphere brightened respectfully. Finally, it scanned Ethan. The entire facility erupted with light. Energy flowed through every crystal pillar. The ancient star map expanded until it covered the chamber. New information appeared. Historical records, lost civilizations, technological knowledge beyond anything currently known. The AI delivered its verdict. Successor confirmed. Everyone stared at Ethan, especially Ethan. I would like to formally object. The AI ignored him. Outsider identified. Images appeared around the chamber. The first civilization, their cities, their science, their final years. The truth finally emerged. The prophecy had never predicted a conqueror. It had predicted a guide, someone capable of uniting knowledge, cultures, and worlds. Someone who could understand ordinary people rather than rule through fear. Someone exactly like the mechanic who constantly made jokes when everyone else panicked. For the first time, Ethan understood. The prophecy was never about power. It was about responsibility. Veyron saw the reaction around him. The guards, the scientists, even the ancient AI, all accepted the decision. His plan had failed. Desperation replaced reason. He attempted one final command. The sphere immediately rejected him. Security constructs emerged from the walls. Within seconds, the rebellion ended. Without a battle, without bloodshed. 3,000 years of technology had made the choice for everyone. Hours later, dawn arrived over Ilaria Prime. The capital watched history unfold. The truth about the prophecy became public. The hidden network shared knowledge capable of improving transportation, medicine, agriculture, and energy production across the entire planet. The kingdom entered a new era almost overnight. Weeks passed, peace followed, and for the first time in years, Ethan found himself standing in the royal gardens without worrying about surviving the day. The city glittered below. Flying vehicles crossed the horizon. New construction projects filled the skyline. The future had begun. Queen Lyra joined him beside the railing. Her silver blonde hair moved gently in the wind. Her long ears caught the sunlight. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lyra smiled. "Do you remember the repair yard?" Ethan groaned immediately. "Unfortunately. You said marrying the queen would solve all your problems." "It was a joke. A very expensive joke." "Agreed." The queen laughed softly. The sound still surprised him, not because it was rare anymore, because he had become the reason for it. Ethan looked toward the city, then back at Lyra. Months earlier, he had been drifting through life without purpose, running from problems, avoiding responsibility. Now he understood something important. A ruler was not someone who sat on a throne. A ruler was someone willing to help others carry their burdens. That lesson had changed him. And it had changed their world. Several weeks later, the entire capital gathered for a celebration unlike any in living memory. Humans, aliens, scientists, workers, pilots, engineers, nobles. Everyone stood together beneath the stars. At the center stood Ethan and Lyra, partners, equals, builders of the future. As the ceremony concluded, Varo appeared beside Ethan. The traitor grinned. "So," Ethan sighed. "So? Did marrying the queen solve your problems?" Ethan looked around. Thousands of people watched him. The queen raised an eyebrow. The entire kingdom waited. Then Ethan smiled. "Not even close." Laughter spread through the crowd. Even Lyra laughed. The twin moons rose above the city. The stars shone brighter than ever. And beneath them, a human mechanic and an alien queen began the next chapter of their lives together. Not because of a prophecy, but because they had chosen the same future. For the first time in a very long time, the future looked bright.